text and kind of how it works and how it portrays meaning, reader response criticism is more about the reader and the reader's experience reading a text. And so the purpose of reader response criticism is to describe the experience of the reader when reading a text, like a poem or a short story. So a few things that you can do when you're doing reader response criticism, if you choose to do reader response criticism, is to specifically describe your experience as a reader, like your own personal experience. That might be different from other readers' experiences because you all have different backgrounds and different lives. You can focus on the experience of the reader in general, like what experience you think the text seems to be creating for just readers, general readers, or what experience the text seems to want you to have, whether you actually have that experience or not. So what is it trying to get you to cry? Is it trying to get you to question the meaning of life? Is it trying to get you to examine love in detail? What is it trying to get you to do? And then another thing that you can do is to focus on the reader that the text projects, its implied reader. And this is sort of a tricky concept, but really think about a poem like The Fish by Elizabeth Bishop, for instance, and think about what reader would align perfectly with the information that's being portrayed in that poem. So somebody who would have knowledge of fishing, somebody who would be empathetic, and so on. So something to keep in mind when you're doing reader response criticism is the communication triangle, which is also known as the rhetorical triangle. You may have encountered it in another class. It's often covered when argumentation is covered in classes. So there are three elements that need to be present in order for communication to occur, is the idea behind the communication triangle. So a writer has to be present because the writer is necessary to create a text. There has to be a topic that's being written about, and then there has to also be a reader to receive that text and to take it in and to interpret it and make meaning out of it. And so reader response criticism really focuses on the role of the reader. And this one I just added in because I thought it was cool. If you've taken English 101, which a lot of you have, and you've covered logos, pathos, and ethos, this is a communication triangle that covers those. I purely just put this in because I thought it was cool. It doesn't really have to do with our class. Anyway, onward. So some terms on page 105 that have to do with reader response criticism that you might find useful are affect and effect. So a text can affect you and it can produce an effect. An expectation and anticipation. So a text creates expectation through its title, through the words that it uses at the beginning of itself. The words that the writer uses at the beginning of it, I guess, would be a clearer way to put that. And then as you expect and anticipate what's going to happen next, often a text will defy that expectation or anticipation, or it will kind of meet it. So that's something that you can think about as you're reading that might add to your experience as a reader. Implied reader, already covered that. That's just a word that you can kind of, or a term that you can add to your vocabulary as you're working through reader response criticism. And then subjective response, that's really what you're creating when you're doing reader response criticism. You're focusing on your own subjective response as a reader that might be different from other people's responses. And that doesn't have to be fact-based. It can be based on your feelings. That still needs to be a response that you ground in the text. It has to come from somewhere, but it can kind of lie within your own experiences as a reader also. So questions to ask as you're doing reader response criticism, I'm drawing these directly from page 78 of Texts and Contexts, are, first of all, how do I respond to this work? How does this text shape my response? How might other readers respond? And when you read Stephen Lin, the author of Texts and Contexts, when you read his analysis of a very short story by Ernest Hemingway on page 88 of your textbook, you'll get to see reader response criticism kind of in action. What Lin does is he sort of works through the story and considers how female readers might read the story and how that might be different from the way male readers read the story. So next up is structuralism and deconstruction. This is chapter 5. These can be found in chapter 5 of Texts and Contexts. And structuralism I'm really only covering because it lays the foundation for deconstruction. In and of itself, it's not really something we're going to practice in the class. It is practiced, but not as often as deconstruction these days. So anyway, structuralism is a theory of linguistic meaning. It's a theory of meaning in language. Not a particular language, but just kind of like language in general. And it was pioneered by Ferdinand de Saussure, who was a Swiss linguist. I believe he was Swiss anyway. And it had two basic principles, sort of, structuralism did. That linguistic meaning is arbitrary and that linguistic meaning is differential. So by arbitrary, what I mean is there's no real reason that we call good things good. We just sort of do. I mean, there's an etymology to the word good. You can trace back its linguistic roots, but ultimately what you'll find is somebody got tired of grunting and pointing and decided to slap a label on something, and the word good was what was chosen. So good doesn't look like things that are good. Good doesn't sound like things that are good. There's really no reason that the word good exists. It just does. So differential. We have a concept of good because we have a concept of bad. It's part of a system of words and a system of ideas, and without that system, the word is meaningless. So linguistic meaning is created out of difference, is really what that part of the equation is about. Deconstruction builds upon that foundation. It's a theory that was pioneered by a guy named Jacques Derrida, who died, I don't know, 15 years ago or so. He was a French philosopher and theorist, and he focused on kind of literature some of the time and analyzing it. Anyway, he had this whole theory, which is called deconstruction, that really just has to do with linguistic meaning not being able to capture real lived experience. It's too simple. It's too black and white. And so he was interested in the gray areas between the black and white. And more specifically, deconstruction focuses on kind of binary oppositions. So, for example, we have this binary opposition, good and bad. And if good doesn't mean anything without bad, then the word good kind of doesn't really contain its own meaning at all. The meaning of good is always deferred or put off to bad. And in a way, when you're thinking about something good, you're thinking it's not bad. Or when you're thinking about something bad, you're thinking it's not good. And so Derrida thought that all language worked this way. We're never really seeing a word when we see a word. We're seeing what it isn't. We're seeing all of the things that we would compare it to. We're seeing it as it works within a system. And for him, this meant that the power dynamic between good and bad, or between any pair of binary oppositions, kind of started to break down a little bit. So the power dynamic between, well, anyway, onward. I was starting to go off on a tangent there. So deconstruction applied to literary texts is what might interest you, because that's what we're doing in the class, analyzing literature and writing about it as a way to practice essay writing skills and research skills. So deconstruction, just simply put, seeks to identify binary oppositions in literary texts, so paired opposites, and show how they produce an unresolvable contradiction or a gap in meaning, which Derrida termed an aporia. And so there are 3 steps on page 123 that you can use if you're interested in doing deconstruction. It might totally freak some of you out and you'll run for the hills, and some of you will be like, yes, this is what I've been waiting for my whole life, and you'll want to use it. So up to you. As you'll see in Essay 2, you'll have the option to use deconstruction, but you won't have to. So if you choose to use it, there are these 3 steps on page 123 that you can follow. So first, you identify the pattern of oppositions in a text. Look for opposites. These don't have to be stated. They can be implied. And then determine which member of those oppositions appears to be favored. So in the good-bad opposition, for instance, we tend to favor good. So in a story or in a poem, if there is an opposition that you see present, like happiness and sadness, or fathers and mothers, or whatever, which member of that pair seems to be favored in the story or poem, and then also at the same time look for evidence that contradicts that favoring. So expose the text's indeterminacy, its inability to communicate a clear message. That's really what it boils down to when you're applying deconstruction to literary texts. A text seems to be saying one thing, deconstruction will often find, but then it's also at the same time saying the opposite thing, and you can't decide which one it really means. It says 2 things that are contradictory, and that's just kind of unsettling, and it's the way the world is. That's sort of what deconstruction seeks to expose. So an example of this is on page 139. Can be found on page 139. If you read the poem Death Be Not Proud by John Donne, you'll notice that there's this death-life binary in the poem. So he talks about death and he talks about life. That's as simple as it gets, really. Donne addresses death as if it were a real live person, and that's where things start to get weird, because how can death be alive? So at the end of the poem, he states, "One short sleep past we wake eternally, and death shall be no more. Death, thou shalt die." So it seems like he's referring